Chapter 2. There was a little girl who had a little curl right in the middle of her forehead. When she was bad, she was very, very bad. When she was worse, she was horrid. Sitting alone in her room, Elsbeth listened to the sounds to which she'd become all too accustomed. Still, they made her heart sink a little each time she heard them. The sharp snaps and long, wide zippers as her father packed his bags for yet another extended road trip away from the family, all in the name of commerce. Sheldon Puhle worked as a door-to-door hearing aid salesman. In addition to its potential for severe knuckle damage, you have to knock very loudly when selling hearing aids door-to-door, it was also a job full of pressure and uncertainty. One never knew month to month how many hearing aids one might be lucky enough to sell. And now Sheldon felt more pressure than ever, knowing that he would have to make extra money to send his daughter to private school, while at the same time housing and feeding a full-grown alpaca, which is not even a distant relative of the goldfish. Mr. Puhle kissed his wife on the cheek, then stopped by Elsbeth's room long enough to give her a quick pat on the head. Then he toted his bags out the door, climbed into his well-traveled car, and drove off. The next morning, 100 miles away, Mr. Puhle had been out on the job, already desperately knocking for 2 hours, at one house, no less, when there came a forceful knock at his own door at 1841 Briarwood Place, Suite 207. Mrs. Puhle, who worked from home part-time as a tax accountant, opened the door to reveal the Puhle's landlord, the short, red-faced Mr. Drones, standing on the other side. "Oh, hello, Mr. Drones," said Dolores. "How are you today?" "Not well, I'm afraid," grumbled Mr. Drones. The redder his face became, the more his new hair plug stood out, giving the top of his head the look of a lawn sprinkler. "We've had more complaints about the noise." "Yes, Mrs. Puhle, we had a little family misunderstanding last night. I'm happy to say it's all been worked out. You needn't worry. It won't happen again. You have my word." "I had your word last time as well," Mr. Drone said with a sneer. "And the time before that. I'm sorry to say that if there's a next time, I'll have no choice but to issue an eviction notice." "I completely understand," said Mrs. Puhle with a smile meant to charm. "Oh, and while you're here, remind me once more about the pet policy. 1 cat or 1 small dog, neither weighing more than 25 pounds. His eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Why do you ask?" "Oh, no reason really," Mrs. Puhle lied. "It's just that our Mr. Comfy has put on a few pounds lately, and I just wanted to make sure he hadn't exceeded the weight limitation. You know how it is with cats. One day you turn around and they're as big as an alpaca." "What the devil is an alpaca?" asked Mr. Drones. Since the previous night, Mrs. Puhle had taken time to look up some information about alpacas online and found out that, as it pertained to Mr. Drones' pet policy, they are virtually no different than llamas. "You don't know what an alpaca is?" asked Mrs. Puhle hopefully. It's a member of the goldfish family, I believe." "All right then, have a nice day." With that, she shut the door, leaned back against it, and wondered what would get them evicted sooner, their tempestuous daughter or the sudden appearance of a large domesticated pack animal indigenous to the foothills of South America. All that day, because she had no school, Elsbeth sat in her room and searched the internet for images of alpacas, trying to decide just which color she would prefer. White with reddish-brown spots would be nice, but that would clash with the bright lavender walls in her bedroom. Of course, she was certain that, with some simple pleading or caustic threats, she could get her parents to paint the room. Perhaps a bright yellow. It would certainly complement her sunny personality, she thought. "What's your opinion?" she asked Dolly Two-Eyes, who sat on the desk and stared at the computer screen with eyes that never blinked and a vacant smile that always shone. The fashion doll's golden locks had long ago been scissored away, leaving its head looking very much like Mr. Drone's with his silly hair plugs. A gift from her parents on her 3rd birthday, Dolly Two-Eyes had remained Elsbeth's best friend and closest confidant, most likely because the doll, made of plastic and paint, was unwaveringly agreeable. For instance, never was there a better chess opponent. Dolly was a very, very cheerful and gracious loser. This allowed Elsbeth to hone her skills in all facets of the game, while at the same time developing the confidence that comes with winning 100% of the time. "That's exactly what I was thinking," said Elsbeth. She was beyond pleased that Dolly Two-Eyes also considered a nice canary yellow to be most suiting. "We should begin as soon as possible, so that when the alpaca arrives, it won't be subjected to my nasty paint fumes. It's bad enough in here as it is with that mildew." She was referring to a patch on the carpet that was frequently wet and had soured since it first showed up several months before. Her parents had made numerous complaints to Mr. Drones about a possible plumbing problem in the apartment upstairs, but he steadfastly maintained that he could find nothing that would cause water to puddle on Elsbeth's bedroom floor. "The good news is," said Elsbeth, "that once we paint the room yellow, the carpet will have to be changed too. I'm thinking light blue." Dolly Do-Eyes seemed to agree with this as well. "That's what I love most about you, Dolly Do-Eyes," Elsbeth said, giving the doll a warm tiny cheek embrace. "We like all the same things. So then, when Daddy returns this weekend, he will take me to the paint store to pick out the most perfect shade of yellow." By the time Mr. Pule lumbered in late Friday night, dragging his suitcases, Elsbeth was already asleep, making this the perfect time for Mrs. Pule to bring up the subject of eviction with her husband. "While you were gone, we had a little visit from the landlord," she said, speaking in hushed tones. "We cannot bring an alpaca into the apartment. Drones will have us out on the street in no time." "Well," said Mr. Pule, "the wool will keep us warm." "This is nothing to joke about, Sheldon." "I wasn't joking," Sheldon replied dryly. "I don't think we have much of a choice here. If we say no, she's bound to throw a fit and get us evicted anyway. Furthermore, she's quite liable to deliberately sabotage her meeting at Waldorf next week. Then what will we do?" "I think we need help," said Mrs. Pule. "Professional help." "What professional help?" said Mr. Pule, throwing up his frustrated hands and running them through his similarly frustrated and steadily graying hair. "We've tried everyone." This was very nearly true. Over the years, Mr. and Mrs. Pule had read just about every book on parenting they could find, all to no avail. In addition, they had met with almost every expert within driving distance, and none of the advice they were given ended up having any effect at all. "We haven't tried everyone," said Mrs. Pule. "Oh, no," said Mr. Pule. "No way, not that quack. He's quite respected." The person to whom Mrs. Pule was referring was a gentleman by the name of Dr. Tobias Fell, a family therapist famous for his tough love approach to child rearing. His latest book, Quit Your Whining, had just broken into the top 10 of the bestseller list and was now available in 12 languages. In addition, Quit Your Whining had made Dr. Fell one of the most sought-after family therapists in the country, and getting an appointment with him on such short notice would not be easy. "I don't know," said Mr. Pule, staring at the blank space on the wall where the spoon collection had once hung. "I just have a bad feeling about him." "What could it hurt?" asked Mrs. Pule. "We don't have to take his advice. Besides, at this point, we've really got nothing to lose." "And what if we do take his advice and it still doesn't work?" asked Mr. Pule. "Then the wool will keep us warm." Dr. Fell, Quit Your Whining, 40% off. "I do not like thee, Dr. Fell, with pop advice and books to sell. Though you may make our daughter well, I do not like thee, Dr. Fell."